There is a song you've probably heard 100 times, maybe more. You may not even know the title. You know, working in radio as long as I did, I learned pretty quickly that many people may not know or even care about a song's title. They just know if they like it or not. Well, people liked this song a lot. But that title, it was strange enough that it spawned a lot of myths regarding what it was all about. People thought it might be some kind of code, a secret drug code perhaps, hiding in plain sight right there on the radio. There was one country that wasn't taking any chances, and they banned the song completely. And yet the real story? It turned out to be nothing about drugs. It was rather ordinary, actually. But the song certainly launched this band into rock's upper stratosphere, where they landed eventually in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The story is coming up on this edition of Beyond the Tracks, so stick around. I'm Dom Testa. Hey, if you enjoy the stories behind songs and albums and artists, well, you're in the right place. Subscribe down in the corner and you will never miss an episode. And you know what? A nice thumbs up will help the robots share this with other music lovers like you. All right, let's start with this song's title, because that's the whole mystery. For years, people heard the title and they assumed it had to mean something illicit. There is a real drug, LSD 25, and the math seemed to line up a little too neatly for a lot of listeners. And since the title sounds like it could be, a countdown or a code, well, the theory basically wrote itself. And it got repeated so often, like so many bogus theories do, and it became so believed so widely that the country of Singapore banned the song outright over it. But here's the real story. The band's keyboard player, who's also one of their primary songwriters, had just dragged home from a gig. It was late after midnight. He was exhausted. And he picked up a 12-string guitar that, for whatever reason, had only 10 strings. You know those wild rock stars, they can be hell on their instruments. Sleep was not coming very easily. Maybe he was still wired, after a live gig. So he decided to write a song about that, about being up in the middle of the night, struggling to compose a song. I suppose this song shows the rest of us that the craft of songwriting, well, it isn't always as romantic or poetic as we sometimes think. The song actually includes lines about sitting cross-legged on the floor, waiting for the break of day, wanting just to stay awake, probably long enough so he could just finish his work. Anyway, somewhere during this grueling songwriting session, he glanced at a clock. And just like that, the song title came to him from the time on the clock. That's it. That's the code. One exhausted rock dude looking at the time. No drugs, no secret message. Just a guy who wrote down what he saw. Sometimes the strangest titles have the most ordinary explanations. Now, to understand why this song mattered so much, you need a little context on the band behind it. This group had come together a couple of years before this song, built around an idea that, well, at least at the time, was pretty unusual. Take a standard rock rhythm section, guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, and inject a full horn section, not a guest horn part here and there, I'm talking a professional horn section as full, permanent members of the band. Nobody was really doing that in rock music at that point. It sounded like nothing else on the radio, I'll tell you that. And their first album got the attention of fledgling FM radio stations, where underground type rock stations loved playing like the full sides of albums, especially the bands who, like this one, were somewhat experimental. To support that first album, the band, who had originally formed in the Midwest, began playing clubs on LA's Sunset Strip, kind of grinding it out, building a following, probably playing night after night. They were the kind of band that was clearly very good. They just hadn't broken through in a major way yet. This song, well, it changed all that. When this track came out, it finally put this band on the map. It became a legitimate hit. Not just a good album cut. We're talking a real chart-climbing top 5 single. Their first one. For a group of artists who had spent years being just the group with the horns out on the club circuit, it's the moment that things changed for good. But the song itself almost has 2 separate legacies, because there's the single people heard on the radio, and then there's what actually happened in the studio. And that gap is where things get interesting. Yeah, these are 2 parallel stories about this song that I love. Quickly, I will tell you that the lead singer on this song recorded his part with his broken jaw wired shut. I'm not kidding. And I will explain how that happened in just a bit. But there's also a story that doesn't get told nearly enough. And it involves one of the most famous guitar players who ever lived, Jimi Hendrix. Well, he happened to catch this band's set one night at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Los Angeles. That was one of the premier music spots in the country at that time. There are numerous artists in the Rock Hall of Fame who made their mark on the stage at the Whiskey. Artists like The Doors. I think Jim Morrison kept his pants on for this one. Van Halen. I think David Lee Roth may have split his pants there. Guns N' Roses turned it into their Paradise City. And Motley Crue showed off their umlauts. Look it up. When Led Zeppelin came across the pond to the U.S. for the first time, they did shows at the Whiskey A Go-Go that pretty much cemented their status as rock gods. And yes, Jimi Hendrix did a couple of shows at the fabled Rock and Roll Club on Sunset Boulevard, what came to be known as the Sunset Strip. People rocked out, they got high. They did something that anthropologists have described as dancing. Oh, I'm just kidding. We all would have been dancing like that in the 60s. Anyway, on this particular night, Jimi Hendrix had just watched this Midwestern band blow the roof off the sucker. He pulled aside one of the band's horn players and said that to him, to Jimmy, the horns sounded like one set of lungs. That is actually very high praise. But then he added, quote, "Your guitar player is better than me." Let that sit for a second. This is Jimi Hendrix, the guy who, to this day, tops most of the greatest guitarist of all time lists that you'll ever see. And he's telling a member of this band that their guitarist, a guy really that most casual music fans couldn't name if you asked them to, was better than he was. I will tell you, this guitarist never got anywhere near the recognition that Hendrix has. Most best guitarist lists don't even mention him. But Hendrix knew, and Jimi Hendrix was not in the business of blowing smoke. So it's time to reveal the band and the song. You may have figured it out by now. The band is Chicago. With their first album, they called themselves Chicago Transit Authority. With the song that's in our spotlight today, they shortened their name, and they blew everyone away with 25 or 6 to 4, released in June 1970.
Waiting for the break of day, searching for something to say, flashing lights against the sky, giving up, I close my eyes, sitting cross-legged on the floor. 25 or 6 to 4.
And that title? Well, keyboard player Robert Lamb wrote it in the middle of the night. When he glanced up at a clock, the one that we mentioned earlier, it was about 3:35 a.m. In other words, 25 or 26 to 4, shortened to 25 or 6 to 4. And now you know. The guitar player that Hendrix was talking about was the late Terry Kath. Terry Kath could reportedly play a rhythm part, a lead part, and sing lead vocals at the same time. Band members who worked with him for years said they never saw anyone else do that. Now, he died tragically young in 1978, which also is probably a big reason why his name never became a household one, the way it did for Hendrix or Clapton or Page. So let's actually hear some of this song's famous solo. I'm going to play a live version of it for you so you can see that it's not just some studio tricks. You'll see what Jimi Hendrix was talking about. That is not a guy just filling space. That is a guy playing like he's got something to prove, and he already knows he doesn't. Now, I also told you that the singer had a broken jaw during this recording session, and it's true. Peter Cetera, who had not only a ton of hits with Chicago, but a very successful solo career as well, was at a baseball game at Dodger Stadium about 2 months before the band was set to record this song. Well, now, Peter was born and raised in Chicago. He grew up a Cubs fan. So when his beloved Cubbies were in LA, he went to the game, he wore a Cubs shirt, cheering on his favorite team, who, by the way, embarrassed the Dodgers that day, 7-0. But a somewhat different beatdown was still to come. A group of 4 Marines saw this long-haired rock and roller wearing a Cubs shirt in their ballpark, and the insults began. Then a skirmish. Allegedly, one of the Marines yelled, "F you, hippie," although he filled in the other letters. And they shoved him, Peter Cetera, down some stairs. And things actually escalated after that until Peter Cetera ended up with his jaw broken in 3 places. As he later wrote, "I was a Cubs fan in Dodger Stadium, and that didn't go so well." Well, that's for sure. He actually wound up in intensive care for a couple of days. Then he had his jaw wired shut. But in rock and roll, the show must go on. Just a few weeks later, while he was in bed recuperating, the band's producer called him up and said, "We can't wait any longer. We've got to finish this song," meaning 25 or 6-4. So on July 24th, 1969, which just happened to be the same day that the Apollo 11 astronauts splashed down in the Pacific after their historic visit to the moon, on that day, Peter Cetera went into the studio and somehow managed to sing this classic rock song through clenched teeth. Listen to this. He's doing it with his jaw wired shut.
Waiting for the break of day, searching for something to say.
Not only that, but from that day on, and I find this really fascinating, from that day on, Peter Cetera basically sang the exact same way. It almost became his signature style, you could say. He explained it like this: when they cut the wires off, I was always afraid of my jaw sticking open again. So I don't really open my mouth a lot when I sing. Here's a bit of that same earlier live recording, which took place not long after the record came out. He's clearly still not opening that mouth very wide. And you know what? You can listen to almost any song Peter Cetera has ever recorded, and it's sung in that same manner. I could never tell. I mean, could you? 25 or 6-4 peaked at number 4 on Billboard's Hot 100 in September 1970. It's the first of what would be many smash hits for the band. And I have to add this, like a personal note. The full album version of this song runs nearly 5 minutes long. It's a masterpiece, really. But when Columbia Records trimmed it for release as a radio single, they hacked it to less than 3 minutes, chopping out an entire verse and chopping out 2/3 of that electric solo you just heard. 2/3 just gone. Now look, I was in the radio business. I understand why stations wanted a tighter single back then. I get the business logic. You know, shorter songs meant you could play 2 songs instead of 1 and get to those commercial breaks faster. But cutting the best part of this song to fit a clock is, frankly, an abomination. The album version is the only version that matters. And that's the version I've included in this episode's Spotify playlist. It's Beyond the Tracks Volume 13, with some of Chicago's best work beyond just this song, plus a few of those other artists I mentioned, including Hendrix. You'll find the link in the description. Coming up next time on Beyond the Tracks, we're going to have some fun with another list episode. I've decided to create my own Mount Rushmore of rock. And this one will feature the women I would place up on that monument. I have to admit, it was too hard to narrow it down to 4. So my Mount Rushmore of women in rock will have 5 people up there. It's my mountain. I can do it however I want. That's coming up next time. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, please click that thumbs up to help an old radio guy like me. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And of course, share this with your friends, the ones who also enjoy the stories behind the songs and the artists we love. Thank you very much for your time. I'm Dom Testa.